Hello, Rink Rats. Hope you are all doing well. Welcome to another session of Rink Rat, the Rink.com podcast. I'm your host, Andy Campbell, and we are here today very urgently to discuss something that happened 2 hours ago. This is season 5, episode 6 of the Rinkcast, the Chicago Rinkcast. As I mentioned, I'm your host, Andy Campbell. I am here with the usual suspects. I am here with Eric Andrews, Sean Fitzgerald,
Wow.
the Bard, and welcome back, Ray Napientek, who we haven't seen in a while, and we're so glad that he's back and with us again today. Before we begin, a shout out to our sponsors, www.puckhockey.com, puckhcky.com. Use discount code The Rink, all in caps, if you want 10% off of some really good hockey swag. And if you spend $100, hey, you even get a free t-shirt. And we like free stuff around here, that's for sure. So anyway, I ran through the intros, but we want to get to it right away. We are going to start with Ray as soon as we can because we've all missed him so much. What has happened is Jeremy Colliton has been removed as the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. A lot of fans think, hey, long-awaited move. A lot of people have wanted this for 2-3 games in, and alas, here we are. Wow, so much has happened in the last few weeks in Blackhawk hockey, and here we have something going on with the on-ice product. Ray, how are we feeling about this today, buddy? Welcome back. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back. I couldn't be better timing, right? I saw it was 3 days or 3 years to the day he was hired. Seems like he was Stan's guy to hey, he came into a tough situation. I mean, he was following Q, had won 3 Stanley Cups, and the on ice product was something that I thought JC was going to have a real hard time following up, and it kind of looked like they were quitting on him here a little bit the last couple of games, maybe the last few periods where you could kind of see maybe they're shutting him out a little bit. I always thought maybe some of the veterans would always do that, having a younger coach and something along those lines. Obviously, not being in the locker room as we know, but you could see guys' faces, you could see guys' body language, stuff along those lines, and it's about time. I think Jeremy's going to probably catch on somewhere, be a successful coach somewhere. I don't think he'll be in the National Hockey League. Maybe he becomes an assistant coach. I'm sure we're going to talk about who's taking over, but it's about time. That start was horrible. It's a legendary, horribly start. And I mean, that's something that it was probably a couple games in the making, but with everything that was going on off the ice, bad start, everything that new GM let him get his feet under him a little bit. This was the right move at the right time.
Yeah, good call. Good call. Thank you very much, Ray. We're going to shift now to Eric Andrews, who just pointed out that I spelled Jeremy Colliton's name wrong on the ticker, and it shows you what I think of Jeremy. Sorry, Jeremy. It's a tough day for you as is. Spelled your name wrong. Thank you for pointing that out. It's correct now. Eric Andrews, how are you feeling about the move today?
Well, first of all, I mean, I just had to fulfill my editing duties, of course. But no, I mean, it's great. I mean, I've never been a Colliton guy. I mean, like Ray said, I think that he was kind of set up to fail from day one. And here we are 3 days or 3 years to the day later, like Ray said. And I don't know that anyone can necessarily be surprised with the result. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's in a way, I'm actually a little surprised that this happened when it did. I'm glad that it did happen because I do think that this was something that needed to happen for them to actually move forward. But in light of Stan Bowman being gone, I did not think that Colliton would be let go at all during the season. I figured that would probably be an off-season move. So it kind of caught me by surprise a little bit, honestly. But yeah, definitely. I'm happy to hear it. I mean, I'm sure Jeremy is a great guy, but he's not a great coach. So,
Yep.
This is a winning business, and he has not done very much of that. So I think it was certainly time to move on.
Yep. Agreed. The Bard, welcome back, buddy. Good to see you. Happy Saturday to you.
Happy Saturday.
And what are we thinking? What are we feeling? Your initial reactions on JC getting shut?
Well, Yeah, I mean, going back to the preseason, I thought a lot about their success was going to be whether or not there was going to be some sort of a defensive system evolving from Jeremy Colliton, and clearly that hasn't happened. So it's really, really not a surprise. I mean, when he was hired, I mean, I know a lot of people thought he had a lot of upside and future, star head coach. We heard all of that. But I also think that, thanks to Bowman, he was also dealt a hand of a team that was fading. That wasn't what it was, in 2015. This was a team that was on the decline, that needed to rebuild. I mean, I still stand by what I had said back in 2017, that they should have traded Kane and Taves, wipe the slate clean, start all over again, maximize their value. He was basically handed a team that was almost a half-assed rebuild. It was, a couple of young players here, a couple of older players. So I just think that he wasn't dealt a good hand. And I'm not defending Colliton, because I think, he was a lousy head coach, as we saw once he got, some legit talent this year. But it was time to go. I mean, his defensive system is completely non-existent. There's a lot more talent than what the record shows this year. So I wanted to give him a chance, and I thought I did. I saw some moments where the team played well. You saw some forechecking, some effort, et cetera, and some team that was competitive a lot of the last couple of years, but then it just kind of fell off a cliff this year. So yeah, it's not a surprise at all, even with everything else that's transpired in the off the ice. But now the slate is clean, and now there's going to be a new GM. New GM's going to hire the new coach. So I think it's a good way to go.
Yep. Agreed. Shawnee, first of all, I rolled through my intros with haste and didn't give any of my colleagues an opportunity to even say hello, which is sacrilege in one sense. The reason it is borderline offensive is I did not give Shawnee a chance to comment on his hat game, which is absolutely incredible. I tried to upstage him today. First of all, Sean the hat, and then your thoughts on Colliton.
Thank you. I will compliment you on your Chicago City collection Cubs hat. I meant to say that. It's very nice. I did not get one either. They were all gone by the time I tried to get one, so very disappointed in myself. My hat is the 2015 home run derby hat for the Cubs. It was in San Diego, so it's a San Diego Padres type theme, yellow brim, Padres colors with the Cubs logo on it. So I really enjoyed it. I actually found it after the parade celebrating the World Series at a Clark Street Sports in Wrigleyville. Don't ask how much I paid for it. It was way too much money.
Yeah. Now, your choice of hat today, does that have any significant meaning based on what you heard about Jeremy Colliton today?
It does, actually, because the hat choice back then, the Cubs were hopeful, and there was hope on the horizon. With Jeremy Colliton out, I think the Blackhawks can be hopeful for something better on the horizon. Mm-hmm. Jeremy Colliton, like everyone said, was set up to fail. Unfortunately, I wrote an article right before the off the ice stuff came out, kind of detailing how they basically inflated his numbers at Rockford to make him look like a better coach than he actually was. So when he came to the NHL, there was so much expectations on him. The veteran players didn't accept him. I mean, Brent Seabrook, I think Andy said it in a prior podcast, that Brent Seabrook was very vocal about being a healthy scratch under Jeremy Colliton, and it didn't work out. Eric posted in his article today, he was 87, 92, and 26 in the 3 years that he was head coach. So put it all together, he has a significant losing record, no defensive system to come away with. His lineup choices, I think also his arrogance. He was so arrogant if he didn't like a player, they were done, and that was it. And that was his arrogance. And I think the signal that the players started tuning him out is when Jonathan Taves basically drew up a power play, took the clipboard from Colliton, and they drew it up. They didn't succeed, but they drew it up. Generally, the coach or the assistant coach or somebody else is doing that. He tried to play it off, but I think the move was the right move. They couldn't let him ride this out just because of what happened last night. Like many of you said, they quit on him last night. Like it was it was abundantly clear to everyone watching the game or following on Twitter, the Blackhawks just quit. And if there's going to be any hope for the future, you got to change the narrative with the organization. And the narrative is just bad all around, on the ice, off the ice. Start changing it. And Colliton being let go was the right move.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, Shawnee, what you just said about, kind of his arrogance or almost defiance in that sense, when he was in press conferences and almost condescending towards his players and towards the guys that he's trying to inspire the most. And let's face it, this has been a very uninspired on-ice hockey team this year. I don't think there's any debate about that whatsoever. Certainly there could be a lot of factors in that, considering the state of the organization and everything that's going on. But the bottom line is, and to turn on the tube last night and to just watch them surrender 2 quick goals and right away. And it's, here we go again. And it's just these defensive breakdowns in the neutral zone and the perimeter play. I mean, it's just, we've talked about how people have referred to this system that Colliton has as if he's some sort of mythical figure with this unbelievable coaching pedigree, which he really just doesn't have. And like I said, it doesn't make him a bad person or anything, but I think that, he was set up to fail. He was, somewhat put on a pedestal in that sense. And I think a necessary move, and, maybe if he was put in a losing situation, Kyle Davidson, new GM, maybe a pretty easy move as your first move as general manager is to get rid of the coach who's been struggling so much. So
I think you knew the end was happening yesterday. I don't know if anybody caught the post game, but they were literally breaking down the outfits that the broadcasters were wearing. And it just became, and then Pat Boyle threw it to commercial and said, "We'll be back to wrap up this fiasco."
Yeah.
It was bad.
Well, it's just, there's nothing to talk about anymore.
Well, exactly.
It's just so glaring and so obvious. And the organization in general really needs to repair so many things. The firing of the head coach doesn't even scratch the surface, but at the same point, it is a business. They need to make money, and people are generally disinterested. And
16,000 people, I think, was the last home game.
Right.
And that 100 level seats empty on television. I think I want to give Ray credit for this. I think he pointed out in the chat that Colliton said that these players don't know how to win.
Yeah,
and I think that Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves have won 3 Stanley Cups.
Well, what does Tyler Johnson think of that comment?
Right, Tyler Johnson just won the Stanley Cup last year, and Jeremy Colliton has not won anything at any level of NHL, AHL hockey. Maybe he won over in Sweden, but
yeah, I can't imagine Fleury enjoys hearing things like that either. It's certainly not. It's so. Yeah, it was time. Is definitely time, and I'm glad they're accountable for that coach, and at least accountable for that. So, with that in mind, Derek King, interim head coach Derek King. Derek King had an awesome playing career. New York Islanders. He was tough. He played hard. He was the guy who would go into corners, win pucks. He was that kind of player. He has a pretty solid coaching resume. He has been coaching for 20 years in the AHL as a head coach now for Rockford. What are we thinking about Derek King slotting in as interim? And it does sound, based on the press release that what Kyle Davidson was saying, that this is a true interim is what it seems like. But let's go to Bard real quick on this one. What are you thinking about Derek King?
Start with the resident Long Islander who watched Derek King for many, many years. So
there you go.
You said it all right about Derek King. He really was a grinder. He was a top 6 winger, actually. He was a 40-goal scorer, but he played hard. He was a leader on those teams. If you remember the Turgeon, Ferraro led teams that had some success in the 90s. He was a good player, and he has some experience as a coach. I don't think unless they win the Stanley Cup or they make a significant run, turning this thing around, then I think he is really the interim coach, as the statement says. But quite frankly, I'm not a fan of keeping interim coaches. I know we've seen it recently in the NHL, but I think those are outliers. But you tend to keep interim coaches, and then next year it kind of just falls off. You get that instant spark, I guess, right away, and maybe extends for a good portion of the season. But yeah, this is not something that I see as a long-term answer. Quite frankly, I just think it's, maybe the new GM will think that way, but I just don't see it.
Yeah. Ray, you have similar thoughts on Derek King and interim role? Will this be pretty brief? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's always tough when you got that interim tag. I mean, if they just play completely lights out, I mean, those things change. But I want to see the compete level in the team. Like Bart said, you're going to get 3-4 games where it's just, hey, it's a new voice, it's a new thing. The players, and it's like this in any sport, your players kind of take on what the coach is about. Jeremy was kind of a laid back guy and really didn't kind of get after it seemed like. And teams started to lose, if they ever had respect, they kind of lost, what he was trying to do. Derek King comes in, you're going to have that 3-4 games. I want to see what it is at an extended time because there's too much talent on this team to be 1-9-2. They're not in the playoffs.
Yes.
We wrote about that early in the season.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a 90-point team maybe. Now they're, that's a distant memory unless they completely, take off here for a little while. But just to see that compete level, just to see what that talent, can they play 500 hockey for a 10, 20 game span, maybe play a little bit better along those lines. But I think overall it's going to be an interim tag. It's a good thing for a brand new GM to kind of say, listen, 1-9-2 is not acceptable. Anybody can get rid of Jeremy as a general manager. Now I bring in Derek. Let's see what Derek does. If he's not it, I could always go to the next guy. Am I going to be it as the GM? The organization, above the general manager could then bring in guys. So, but the compete level, I think will really tell a ton over the next 10, 20 games to say, hey, did they really tune out Jeremy? We know they're not talented enough to make the playoffs, but they're not 1-9-2. There's got to be somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, I think it's an awesome. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bart.
I was just going to say one thing I want to add that I forgot to mention that I thought was interesting, and I'm curious to hear everybody's opinion on this, is that we talked about this in previous podcasts, is that we all thought that there was a good chance that Mark Crawford was going to be named the interim head coach, and he was, he's still employed. The other two assistant coaches got fired along with Colliton. So, it's interesting that Crawford did not get the interim coaching job. And I think, Ray, as you said, this really is a new voice. Crawford, they know, and I know Crawford, the head coach, could be different than Crawford, the assistant coach, but now you really have a new voice.
Yeah. And I think you brought that up, Bardo, I think on one of our podcasts, is almost saying that, it was Bardo and Shawnee saying, or maybe it was Eric, probably all of you guys. It was actually Eric. At any rate, Eric, I'll let you, I will give you Eric full credit saying, if you put Crawford in there, it's just having another Colliton and having the same voice. So now you got someone totally new. So I think that's an excellent point. And Eric, what are your thoughts on this, on Derek King coming in general? I mean, do you like this move for the time being? It'll probably be quick. All signs are pointing to that, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and, we kind of unpacked it on on that episode when we talked about it and just right now. But what I was meaning with that original comment was that, obviously if Crawford was the interim, he's going to implement different things, but whether or not the players perceive that to be different or not, who knows? So I think that probably did factor into this decision of going with King instead of Crawford. In terms of King, I mean, I do think that he truly is just an interim. I mean, unless he just blows the doors off and they completely turn this thing around and make the playoffs and make a run. But I don't see why he would be that permanent guy, especially given that the release seems pretty clear that that's not the case.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it in a way makes sense that they chose him because he does have that reputation and connection with some of the younger players. And of course, having been a successful NHL player, I think that was somewhat resonate with guys like Kane and Taves and Fleury and Johnson and, you know, guys like that, rather than Jeremy Colliton, who had a cup of coffee, you know, for a few seasons and didn't really do a darn thing in his career.
Yep.
So, you know, at least I think that those veteran players, you know, can at least respect what Derek King has done, you know, both on and off the ice. So, yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense, especially if you're not having him be the long-term answer, which, like I said, I don't think that he is. Where they end up going, I don't know. You know, I don't know if they, again, try to do something innovative like they were trying to do with Colliton. I don't know if they go with a recycled coach, so to speak. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, it surprised me a little bit, you know, that they didn't go with Crawford, just because I think that is kind of the safer play, so to speak. And that's what a lot of people thought would happen. But, yeah, Derek King being the guy didn't really surprised me too much. I mean, I think everyone figured it was going to be one of those two guys. You know, it wasn't going to be anybody else. Right. You weren't going to have it be Mattel or Brookbank. Obviously, you know, they're gone.
They're gone too. Yeah.
But yeah, and there's no one else really in the organization that would be an adequate answer for that question. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to see, you know, like what you guys were saying, you know, can he truly motivate and inspire these guys to play competent hockey the rest of the season? We'll see. You know, regardless of how effective he may or may not be, is it going to be good enough to get them into the playoffs? Probably not at this point. I mean, they've got 70 games left, and they probably need to put up at least 92 more points on top of the amazing 4 that they already have.
Right. I think Ray, you had the stats on this one, Ray. I think I saw you tweet this out, or at least say it in our group. What do you got?
45 and 26 gets them to 94, and that may not even get them in. So
40 yeah,
overtime losses. I mean, I'm not
right.
You know, it's not an exact. Right. 45 and 26 gets them to 94.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask this group.
Not happening.
No, that's no good. Shawnee, Derek King, how long will it be? What do you think? Thoughts on it? Do you like the move?
So I was originally in favor of Mark Crawford taking over, but while everyone was speaking and what Eric and the Bard said last podcast where we talked about hockey, I think Derek King brings something in addition to being like a veteran coach and a hard player. He hasn't been in Chicago. Like, he's not involved in any of the media storm that was going on, he wasn't a part of Colliton's staff, none of that. He's completely insulated outside of all of that. So I think that is something, it's like a breath of fresh air coming in.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing in why they went with Derek King. I think also Derek King's probably the interim head coach until either Kyle Davidson gets the interim tag removed off of him or they bring somebody else in. Like, I think Derek King's decision is contingent on if Kyle Davidson is named the GM. If Kyle Davidson's named the GM, then he could ride out Derek King for the rest of the season and then start over. If they bring somebody else in to take over as president and GM and Kyle Davidson is moved to another role or something like that, then it's completely changed over, and then you've got to figure out the direction of the organization. So I'm thinking it's Derek King is just the short-term answer. I think even if they make the playoffs, I don't think he's retained as the head coach, just because if there's a new GM, he's going to want to bring in his guy. He's going to want to bring in his own coaching staff. He's going to want his own philosophy on the organization. And he's going to want to choose everything. To use a analogy from another sport, I think Bill Parcells said, if I'm going to be the cook, let me pick the ingredients. I think Bill Parcells said something like that. That's why he always wanted to be GM and coach. So I think Derek King will ride out this season, and then they'll go with somebody else.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Eric, you got one more plug in there?
Yeah, I think something to also think about, you know, with why Derek King Mark Crawford, let's consider what the Blackhawks are going through right now, and let's also consider
there's a history
that Mark Crawford has had some issues in the past. So there's no way that they were going to put someone with that history in that spot.
No, maybe they finally consulted a PR firm.
Yeah, the optics of that would just be ludicrous.
Yeah,
that's for sure. So that makes total sense, and that's definitely a valid point. I don't with the Derek King thing. The other part of it is I don't know how many guys played under him in Rockford that are currently on the Blackhawks roster. It's not that many. I mean, the only regular that Derek King probably had was Brandon Hagel at one point. A couple seasons ago. But then if you look up and down the roster, Mac, Entwistle, has played for him as a regular. But then that's pretty much about it.
Yeah,
as far as having regular time, a little bit Wyatt Kalynuk, a little bit of time. Shiva
started down there for a couple games.
Yeah, Kurashev, a little bit, but then other than that, Lankinen. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Hardman, but so it's not like this laundry list of guys that have played for King, and that this is like the next phase of their careers with Derek King around. So I definitely agree with all that this is not a permanent fixture.
Well, I think even with that too, though, I mean, I think there's kind of that mindset that Derek King is kind of, at least in terms of this organization, has been more of a developmental coach.
Yep.
Whereas I think Mark Crawford, is kind of more of a get this thing back on track, we got to win now type of thing.
Sure.
So, that also encourages me in the fact that, this is a type of coach in his role that is still going to be focusing more so at least on those younger players continuing their development. Because I think, especially at this point in this season, that's kind of what the focus needs to be.
Because Ray's a Sox fan that I just found out the other day. Derek King is the Ricky Renteria.
Just found that out.
I just found that out. Well, I just kind of paid attention to it, maybe. He's the Ricky Renteria.
Cubs hat on. You're both going to miss the playoffs.
But I agree with what Eric said. Yeah, like development is now the most important thing. And Derek King coached Kurashev, and how Kurashev's in the NHL, so that he's developed a couple guys that have made it to the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, I'd put me chips on the Hawks tomorrow night. I know that much. I mean, usually, we've all seen the removal of a coach, and then the team comes out firing on all cylinders. And I really, to Ray's point, as much as I hate giving him credit, this team is not 12 games and 4 points. They're not this bad. Well, actually, they are, because it's documented. But the point being is that, I mean, it is striking how dismal they've been under Colliton, and how unorganized and the disinterest in playing hockey. So I guess, this also begs the question, and to move on, I mean, will King finish out this season? Let's go around just a quick fire round of yes, no's. Will King finish out this season? I'm going to say yes. Eric?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Bard?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Everyone says yes. Shawnee, why so sure?
Because I think the general manager is the interim, the head coach is the interim. Until they have establishment of who's running the entire Blackhawks organization from a player personnel standpoint, that's why I think they're going to stick with an interim.
Gotcha. Ray, do you feel similarly? That same kind of logic?
Absolutely. It's going to be the next guy that gets hired as general manager, gets to pick his coach, and has to build from the ground up. I mean, they might be the worst farm system in the National Hockey League. There might be one or two, but that's not a good place to be at. So this is just a holdover.
Yeah, got it. Eric, similar feelings?
Yep,
pretty much. Bardo, big holdover.
Yeah, I think actually the interesting layer that we're not talking about is that if the GM I guess let me take a step back. If they're not making the playoffs, who is making the trades to try to replenish the minor league system? Is that Davidson? Or is that even with the interim tag? Or by then, will there be a new GM already in town? That to me is an interesting question. Even if a new GM is in town, I think he's going to, go with the narrative that he's going to evaluate Derek King, and let him play out the rest of the season and then go from there.
Well, it does beg that is a legitimate question. And I think that if we're under the assumption right now, and I do have this as another question, and that's, is there even time to salvage this season? And I guess we'll find out. I mean, they only have a few weeks now to figure out if they could salvage the season. I mean, we'll know 3 weeks from now if, the Blackhawks have a shot at still making a run. And if they're in that case, is Davidson the guy that will be able to pull, the necessary moves before the trade deadline to ship some parts out of town to try to get returns? I mean, I don't even think that we know that. And so is he the kind of guy that we just say, okay, well, you can deal Marc-Andre Fleury at a prorated deal for the rest of his salary for someone who might be out there willing to take him? Will he be able to pull those moves off and get a good return? I mean, there are other assets out there. I mean, who else is coming off the books? Will someone want DeHaan? I think, is DeHaan in the final year of his contract, or does he have 2 more years?
I think it's 2.
2? Well, then maybe we're stuck.
Tyler Johnson a 1 year?
No, I think Tyler's got a couple of more years, but I would actually look at Taves and Kane as a possibility. They may say, it's time now, and
more Kane than Taves. I don't know what you can deal. I mean, you're going to have to eat so much salary to deal Jonathan Taves right now.
Yeah, Kane's going to have more value.
Amount of money.
Yeah, Kane's going to have more value. Taves, you may have to wait till the offseason or even next trade deadline. But quite frankly, I think you have to look into trading those guys. And if it's going to be a buyer's market. I think
we're forgetting Andy's favorite player too, who's now going to play theoretically, Dylan Strome.
Derek King's a smart enough guy. I don't think he's just going to show up and be like, oh, Strome now. No, come on. We can't do that. We can't.
Oh, one guy we forgot, by the way, Derek has coached the legendary Alex Nylander. So we may see a call up soon.
May see a call up. Yeah. So I get, so it does beg the question. Like, I mean, the Hawks will probably have to make moves at the deadline. And moves probably as sellers. And will they be able to do it with this kind of interim status? Any thoughts on that? I mean, will Davidson be the guy to do it, or are they just going to remove Davidson for someone else who can do it?
I think it just depends. If they find their guy, I mean, they say that they are actively looking for a GM. I think they said that after Bowman was let go. I mean, to me, that's the big question: is who is going to be the GM by the time the trade deadline rolls around? And quite frankly, typically it's usually a seller's market. I mean, you usually can get, pretty good value. I mean, I would want somebody a little bit more proven that can come in and get some good talent into the organization. I don't know about Davidson. I don't know what he can do.
Didn't the Buffalo Sabres several years ago bring in like Pat LaFontaine and all those veteran like organizational guys to kind of run the organization for the rest of that year until could they bring in somebody like that to kind of work with Davidson, like a consultant or something? So
yeah, it would have to be from the outside, though. I mean, I don't
somebody
don't bring any Blackhawk names back.
No, but like bring somebody who is a consultant or something that can help him navigate this difficult until you find the right GM who's willing to take on this mess. Because the whole thing's a mess. Yeah. The on ice, the off, all of it's bad.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, a lot about trading and personnel moves is about relationships that a GM has with other GMs. And quite frankly, what has Kyle Davidson done in terms of creating those relationships?
I think his claims to fame, literally, was working on Dominique Kubalik's contract extension and Dylan Strome's. I'm dead serious. I'm not even joking about Dylan Strome.
Yeah.
Come on.
Sean,
you're making up that last part. Right?
I am not. That was in his bio. Like when he got hired or when he was named the interim GM, that was part of it.
So time out. What you're telling me right now is that in his bio that was published was a highlight saying he was directly involved in an extension for a player that sits in the press box.
Yes. I'm 100.
Awesome.
Eric can edit me on that one if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure
who sits in the press box and samples the popcorn shrimp. Awesome. Okay. Well, that's very uplifting. That sounds great. That's nice. Yeah. Well, at any rate, okay. So coaching candidates out there. I personally think that the best thing for the Blackhawks to do is to give Derek King, as a lot of you have said, give him the year. Give him the full year, because I don't know who you can find at this point. And at this point, what is the point? It's a lot of points there. But who's going to be out there in the offseason that can possibly command this ship next year? I know who I love, but I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. Okay, who will possibly be a contender to be the next Blackhawks head coach? Let's go to Eric. Claude Julien. All right, we'll start with you then, Bardo, since you jumped in. Claude Julien, why?
I mean, I think from what I've seen of him in terms of what he's done in Boston, he's worked well with young guys. I mean, they had a lot of young players when they built that roster into a cup team. He worked with a lot of veterans over there. So to me, I think if you are going, I don't know if they're going to be going with the rebuild or not. I mean, quite frankly, I have no idea what the vision is, and that's going to be, a lot from what the GM it should be obviously the one to establish that. So we'll have to see. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of him, and I thought he'd be good for the current roster. I mean, as far as next year's roster, I don't know what the team's going to look like. So maybe he's not the best guy, but to me, looking at, let's just say you take this roster and bring it back. To me, Claude Julien's a guy that I would think of. That's an experienced guy that's one.
Okay. What do you think, Ray?
I think the coach is the toughest part, because I think we're going the wrong way. With the GM is going to have to be in place first. I mean, the list I think is pretty big. I mean, Torts I think is kind of a funny one to throw out there. You got guys like Tocchet, guys like Patrick Waugh that want to get back in the game. I mean, there's names that are going to get thrown out there that I don't even want to think about until you get that GM in place. But for me, that's the thing, is you get King through this year. If you're trading at the deadline with the new GM, there's going to be more guys that you're going to be able to talk to in the offseason. And that's something where I don't want to be forced in game 41 this year to pick a guy and have him for 4 years and have the same conversation 4 years from now. I want to have my new GM in place, who then at the end of the year, maybe we're picking up an assistant coach that is going to be worth it, as opposed to somebody that's just sitting around right now doing television.
Yep, I agree. Eric, what are your thoughts? What do you think? Any good candidates out there? I know we've kind of talked about this before Colliton got canned, but always better to revisit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, my thought is a lot of what Bard said, like, they need to figure out what they're actually doing before they can answer that question.
Right.
Are they serious about Sean leaving us? And
we lost Sean, everybody. Anyway,
are they serious about actually rebuilding?
Sean
if they are,
his new GM, he's out.
There it is. He got.
So, I mean, hey, that's better than what they had before. So,
yeah.
Are they serious about rebuilding? If they are, I don't think we're going to see, one of these bigger name coaches, so to speak, a big name recycled coach. You're not going to see Torts come in and coach a rebuilding team. That's not what he does. If they seriously either think that they can be a contender, which right now they can't be, there's no reason with what they have right now to think that they can be a contending team within the next few years. Or if they feel, financially, we need to be a playoff team, we need to start making money again, then maybe they do go out and get one of those more established guys that, is kind of more of a win now type of guy. So, in my mind, that's the question that needs to be answered. Long term, what's going on here? Are they rebuilding, or are they trying to have success on the ice or off the ice in the next few years? That's going to determine the coach that they hire. And like Ray said, I think the GM does need to come first, with whichever route they're going with. I mean, that's not something that Kyle Davidson is going to determine unless he is the guy. So, yeah, I mean, I don't even want to throw out a name of, who I think is a realistic candidate, because like I said, it truly does come down to what their direction is.
And to kind of circle back, that's where I want to be able to in the off season say, okay, who's been sitting next to Cooper? Who's been talking with Bryn DeMar? Who's been with Trotz? Who's been with, who's this guy that I could bring over and go, okay, maybe I've got myself a young Cooper or a young Bryn DeMar, a young Trotz, something along those lines, as opposed to just being forced to hire somebody 41 games in.
Well, no, totally. I totally agree with that. And that Lane Lambert is the guy that I've been coveting the last few years. He's been with Barry Trotz through all of his successes, and he's clearly ready to be a head coach at some point really, really soon. I would love a guy like that. Again, the GM piece does need to fall into place, and I'm sure there's so many more names out there. Even people are floating around like Ed Olczyk as the next GM of the Hawks, though. I don't think that's a good move at all. Everyone loves Eddie. He's a great guy, but it's time to go outside a little bit. While you left us for a few minutes, Sean, to take your call, and what did they offer you to be the next GM is our first question.
Well, I turned down the Mets GM job just now because I want the Blackhawks GM job.
Yeah.
But they said they'd get back to me on that one.
But reality is you either got offered solar panels or you got offered, or the warranty on your car is expiring. Which one really is it?
My car warranty is expired. Sorry, guys.
So at any rate, any GM or coaching candidates come to mind, or just let this play out? Eric brought up a good point. Let's not even throw out names right now. Let's just kind of see where we go. It's just a real interesting position.
I think it's it sound like everybody else. It's whoever the general manager is. Hopefully it's a veteran. If they're really going to do something smart here, they should pick like a veteran president who understands how to build a hockey organization, and then pluck some young assistant GM who, whether he worked for Yzerman or somebody like that, who understands like where the way hockey's going, and they kind of work together to pick then a coach that fits both their styles. I think that's how that's how you should build the organization. You got to look at the successful general managers and where, like Steve Yzerman built the Tampa Bay Lightning, right, and he found John Cooper. So if I'm the Blackhawks, I'm looking at his right-hand man, whoever that may be, to be either my GM or my president, and let him run. And who knows? Or you bring in Mark Hunter, like Gate is champion, like I like. You bring Mark Hunter in, and you bring in you make him the president. You bring a younger guy in, and then you pick Bruce Boudreau's assistant, not Bruce Boudreau. I'm sorry, Barry Trotz's assistant. Or you bring in you've got to have some form of what the organization is doing. But I think all the smart organizations in any sport, they always look at the ones that not just have like 1 year success, have long-term success, and hope you can duplicate that.
Right.
And that's what I'd like them to do. Just hopefully it's not like, to use the analogy from another sport, the New England Patriots, where everybody tries to pluck coaches off their staff and they never succeed anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
that's one thing I'm worried about when I bring up that thought process.
Yeah, no, I would agree with all. And I think it's kind of, I'd love to throw some names out there. There's a lot, but as far as GM candidates, I just don't really know who a lot of the people out there are that are doing the work behind the scenes, where people are, knocking on the door saying, hey, this guy's ready. So I really have no idea. I like the idea of bringing on a coach who is not recycled, who has been kind of cutting his teeth, in some sort of system, Ray, as you were indicating, who's been working with another head coach for a long time, to be ready to take the reins eventually. But, that raises the next question. This was not part of the original question question set that I threw out to you guys, but I think it's worth asking with the remaining time we have right now. Obviously the Hawks have gone through a lot, and it is probably, as of right now, one of the worst chapters in Blackhawk history. And with everything the organization is going on, with everything that's transpired in the last few weeks, is part of rebuilding that brand, moving away from every facet of the organization, from everything that has transpired with Kyle Beach. And with that come the two remaining names and icons, if you will, of Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. And so I think it is worth throwing out there. Is it, for all sorts of purposes, rebuilding included, is it time to move away from those players and start seeing if you can move them? Now, some people will argue, yeah, it's been time to trade them for a long time, because just from the rebuilding standpoint, Jonathan Toews is not the player he was, just as far as a hockey player. He's not had a great start to the season. Patrick Kane will continue to put up points. That's just what he does. He's a terrific talent. He still has so much energy when he plays the game. Every night he's on the ice. He's smiling, he's celebrating. Is it time to just deal him and get anything you can for him? The Bard. What do we think?
I'm sticking to my narrative from 2017. Absolutely. Yep. Trade both of them. 100%. Kane right now does have the most value. Get what you can. I mean, if you really are truly going to rebuild, then get rid of him. But again, this goes back to what is the organization's priorities? Is it selling tickets, or is it actually putting a good hockey product? I mean, it's sort of a chicken and egg kind of thing, but
sure.
To me, it's like, let's just, create the next generation of Blackhawks, the next generation of Blackhawk fans. I mean, this is what, I always kind of use this in that, the New England Patriots are a team that knows when to say goodbye. They're not always right, but they know when to say goodbye to players. They don't wait too long. I mean, you saw it with Richard
They just
Seymour.
did it. Yeah.
they just did it with Gilmore. I mean, it's like they don't hang on to these guys at the downside of the career. So it's like they know when these guys are going to have, peak value, and they know how to keep that organization moving. So this is like the time to say goodbye, or it was to me several years ago, but let's do it already.
Yeah. I mean, again, they have to go and they would have to ask them to waive, I mean, again, it's contractually, it's up to them.
Right. But quite frankly, if you're getting asked that, it means probably the organization doesn't want you. And if you're a team that's rebuilding and stinks, why would you want to, just rot there unless you just, really want to stay there and don't really care, and you're Henrik Lundqvist. But quite frankly, it's like, just go already and try to, lead another team.
Yeah. Eric, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think the should they is different than the will they.
Oh yeah. Good call. Real good call. When
you're talking about the rebuilding component, obviously they shouldn't even still be here. Like Bard's been saying, the correct time as far as a asset maximization, timeline, that was 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. It was. So, is that to say that they are worthless at this point? No. I mean, Kane obviously is not worthless. Toews with his contract is a different question, but I mean, you would still find a taker at some return. You might not get a first round pick and a top level prospect and all that, but I mean, you'll get something for him. One thing that kind of comes to my mind, with your original question, Andy, trying to move on from the remaining pieces. If you just look at it purely from that factor, I would think that Toews would be the guy that you would want to move instead of Kane, because he was the captain, he was the leader, he was that go-to guy in every facet, with the team. And, will we ever truly know what everyone knew and what was done? Probably not. But, the fact that Toews was the captain, you got to think that to some degree, he could have done or said something, even if it was during training camp the next year when he found out or something. You're a leader probably is going to follow up on that. And he didn't.
Right.
And, both of them have not really, handled this situation all that well in the aftermath. I mean, their comments were not very encouraging, I would say, more so defending Stan and not actually addressing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think obviously the responsibility kind of falls on both of them to some extent there. But I think, Taves being the captain, being that leader, I think it kind of more goes on his shoulders than it would Kane.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then of course you factor in the financial aspect of things. Those are guys that still, as long as they are here, are going to be selling jerseys. Fans are going to want to come see them. So, I think it does kind of go back to that long-term vision, what the franchise wants to do moving forward. If you're wanting to contend in the next few years, I don't think you move either of those guys. Again, that's should they, will they? That's two different things.
Yeah.
But
and I think, sorry.
I don't know. I think I've kind of unpacked that all as much as.
No, and definitely. And well done. Well played. A lot of really good points there. Ray, what do you think, man?
I got to get rid of Kane because I got to pick up possibly another first round year next year if I'm not number one or number two.
Yep.
I got to figure out what's going on. Maybe going forward from that, picking up maybe another first rounder for him or a second the year after to stockpile
right.
Organization. I got to figure out if Marc-Andre Fleury is just disinterested and didn't want to be here, and I can still get some good draft picks for him. Seth Jones. We all know I'm not the biggest Jones fan. That contract's going to kill the Hawks for a long time.
I believe the term is "or" is what you call him.
Yep, we paid him like Bobby Orr. So the biggest thing is is just getting back the draft picks. That's I'm going to help us win.
Yeah,
help the Hawks win. That I threw that tweet out there the other day. Alex DeBrincat and Kirby Doc. Who else are you building this team around? And they're not world beaters. They're going to be excellent hockey players for a very long time. But we're not talking about guys that are just going to completely put this organization on their back like guys can. So if you're not getting the number one pick next year, what are you going to do? You got to get rid of Kane. He's the only one that's probably going to get some good stuff back. If anybody's willing to take Jonathan Taves, see you later. That's fine.
Yeah.
And So anybody that is willing to go, waive it, gone. And then I've got so many other guys. We've mentioned, DeHaan. We mentioned Johnson. It was such a weird offseason to say the Hawks are going to rebuild, and then they went out and did what they did.
Yep. Did not do that. Yeah.
I've sat at the dinner table to eat dinner longer than they rebuild. So it was just so. Anybody,
DeHaan,
it's gone. See it. Yep.
Yeah, DeHaan his contract is over after this season. Just looked it up. So DeHaan is again. I don't think you get a ton for him. Maybe someone who's looking for a bottom 6 or 7 who's a cup contender. Maybe at this point, just considering how he's producing. The other one who's up for contract after this year is Dominic Kubalik. Is going to be an RFA, and can you get something for him if he all of a sudden starts cranking it out? But Ray, to your point, purely transactional. As far as return, you could get a lot for Patrick Kane right now.
Oh, absolutely.
You could get a ton for Patrick Kane right now.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Taves, who knows? They probably have to eat at least half of his salary for next season, which might be worth it when you think about it. And if you can get picks, that's a big part. Shawnee, your thoughts on this? Didn't go to you. Been going to you late tonight. Sorry, man.
You're good. Saving the best for last. I think Ray and Eric unpacked it brilliantly. I think Eric brought up all the exterior factors, and that might be why attendance is down. In addition to the product on the ice, all the off the ice issues with Kyle, all the scandal and all that stuff. And if attendance is already trending downward and the faces of your franchise were a part of the issue off the ice, it's time to move on. It's time to go by. And to Ray's point, if they want to go, let them go. And if you're going to trade Patrick Kane, trade him now, because a team's going to get a year and a half with him under contract. That's going to maximize your return. If you wait to the offseason, they're only going to get 1 year of return, and your return is going to go down. So,
Now the Hawks might have, even if they get picks for Kane, they could possibly get at least a first rounder, a second rounder, maybe a good prospect, but then you're probably getting someone with some salary back. I would imagine. Right. He's still at 10.5, and I don't know how many
Or you're gonna
contenders out there.
You're going to have to
Yeah.
retain some of that.
Some of it, but it would be interesting to see who has the cap space to.
And like you said with Calvin DeHaan, you move him, even if it's for a middling, you move him for something. Ryan Carpenter's a free agent after next year. You can move him, a grinder. He's only due $1 million. Like there's a lot of movable assets on this team. I know they were trying to trade Andrew Shaw's contract. I had read that they were trying to trade Andrew Shaw's contract off the books because I guess they just didn't want the LTIR. Brett Connolly's still down in Rockford. If somebody wants him, like anybody, just bye-bye.
Yeah, there's a lot of action there. Well, good stuff tonight, fellas. Final thoughts on the Hawks moving forward. Bard, you got any final parting shots for us? Anything we're thinking about?
Hopefully they'll be getting a GM soon. I mean, that to me is the next big move. And that person, and hopefully it's sooner than later. And then that person can start, tearing down this roster. If we're all under the assumption that they're not going to make the playoffs this year, I'm hoping that they get a GM in here that's got a very, very clear vision of what he's going to do, or she, and just stick with it. And that's what it comes down to.
Yep. Excellent. Eric, any last parting words of wisdom on the state of the Hawks?
I would say that I am at this point, for at least the foreseeable future, a lot more interested in what happens off the ice than on it.
Yep.
I said it in the chat last night. I got home right as the game was starting last night, planned on staying up all night to watch the game. And from the time that I got out of my car to the time I got inside, it was 2-0. And I said, I'm not wasting my time watching the game.
Yeah, I don't. It's
so, yeah, at this point, I might watch if it's a weekend or if it's, an early start, an East Coast game on a weeknight or something, might watch some of it. Or if it's, they're playing the Oilers, then I'll turn it on and I will watch Connor McDavid. But yeah, there's very little reason to watch the team at this point. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see what happens with the front office moves whenever that might happen. And then subsequently, assuming that whenever those moves are made, that we start to see a little bit clearer of a picture of where the franchise will be going in the future.
Yep. Good point. Shawnee?
It's like a train wreck. You should look away, but you can't look away. The whole thing.
Yeah.
So
I'll be watching tomorrow. I'll be very curious to see how they react.
I will, depending on what time they're on, because I don't know. I know Eric brought it up in the chat, but I want to thank the Blackhawks for giving me a belated birthday gift for firing Jeremy Colliton this week.
Hey, happy birthday!
Yeah, because my birthday was Wednesday, so they're a couple days late, but still, I'm very happy about that. But I will watch just to see what is going on. I'm curious about the off the ice moves, and hopefully they hire a public relations firm because they need serious help in that department. Ray, I think, had the tweet or the chat message of the night when he said that Jonathan Taves should have just pulled his pants down in front of the camera because that's about as good as what he did speaking. So,
whoops.
Yeah. So I don't know if Ray wanted that to be on the podcast, but I thought it was brilliant. So,
yeah, Ray, that comment, that alleged comment aside, any last shots for the Hawks here? Your thoughts on the way out tonight?
Hard to be a fan right now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Off the ice, it's horrible. I mean, it's gut wrenching. I mean, I don't even know there's a word for it. And on the ice, it's just a terrible product, and it's going to be this way for a long time. So just to stay with the on ice product, you should have been rebuilding 2 years ago. It should have always been about 2023. Kind of like what Bard said. I said that 2 years ago on a podcast with a couple other fellas. It was like, hey, it's not about now. It's about 2023, but they were trying to put butts in the seats. They're trying to win one more. And then the nonsense that went on this offseason, it's going to be a long time until the Hawks are going to be successful again. So, and that's not even, like I said, the off-the-ice stuff is just, it's horrible. There's no words for it.
There are no words for it. And the rebranding is certainly going to take some time and to gain back the trust of the city and of all the fans out there who are so disappointed. It's really just a tough scene right now. There's not a whole lot good going on in this organization. We do have a quick question that we can answer quickly. Mikey, thank you for writing in your question in the comment. What do we think of Seth Jones? And where do we see him with the Hawks? Well, contractually, he'll be with the Hawks for a very long time. He's making a lot of money. Personally, I think Seth Jones is a very, very good hockey player, a very quality defenseman. Will they build their D around him? Most likely they will. Is he worth all the money they're paying him? That is always up for discussion. He's a good defenseman, but his contract might come back to get the Hawks similarly to how other contracts have in the past. Time will tell. But if you're asking Ray and potentially a few others, this could be an albatross as well.
Yeah, he's a fine defenseman, but you're paying him to be a number one. And just because you're playing 25 minutes doesn't mean you're a number one. So
nope.
He has to play out there. And I tweeted out yesterday, like, how bad is this defense? Like, how could you have found 6 guys to play as bad as they are? And then, and he's just,
do you think, Ray, do you think it's stylistically because of he was in like a bad system?
Yeah, I mean, it can be absolutely 100%.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. Look at Derek King. Can he come in and do something different? I'm not the X's and O's guy.
If Seth Jones sought out his time this year in Columbus, would he have been paid $9.5 million in the summer of 2022? Probably. I mean, I think someone probably could have paid him that amount if he had a good year this year. But I think, Ray, I don't know if you tweeted this exactly or someone else. I mean, how do you even rate this defensive core right now? I mean, how do you even assess what they're doing, how they're doing it? And let's also, Marc-Andre Fleury has been poor.
Yes.
I mean, he's been bad. He has not been good at all.
Yeah.
And that obviously hasn't helped. But I mean, I don't even know where you begin to dissect and break down the.
You can't.
No, you can't. There's no barometer for this right now.
I mean, I'm getting peppered. I've been bad, but I'm also getting peppered. I mean, he's 6 months from being a Vezina Trophy winner.
Yeah.
It's just being absolutely.
No, it's just
his confidence is shot. But I mean, again, it goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning of this before the season started. I mean, it was the defensive system and whether or not Colliton was going to improve in that area, and they haven't. I mean, the talent's better than what he has the last couple of years, but I mean, sans Eric Gustafson, but yeah, I mean,
we couldn't go a podcast without.
No,
of course not. I wasn't going to let that happen. So
I don't.
I made the first boo boo, and if
Colliton's gone. There's a positive. There's a positive today. Colliton's gone.
And if they bring in the guy you want, Andy, hopefully he brings in Barry Trotz's defensive system, because every team Barry Trotz coaches, there's a defensive system, and his teams play good, sound defensive hockey. We haven't seen that in a long time here. No, we haven't, and we'll see. We'll see what Derek King can bring. But at any rate, thank you to all of our listeners in kind of this abrupt, impromptu, if you will, podcast, which is great. One last shout out to our sponsor, puckhockey.com, PUCKHCKY. Discount code the Rink in all caps, 10% off of any hockey gear. So thank you, fellas, for the impromptu gathering on a Saturday, no less. And we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. It certainly has been eventful on West Madison Street. And we'll see where we go from here. All right. Thank you all. Take care, guys. See you, Shawnee. See you, Eric. See you, Bard. See you, Ray. Let's see Ray again. Let's see Ray again.